This week we're going to look at references, user-defined functions, and debugging. So let's start by creating a new project for week 5. And this will be a PHP empty project, the default interpreter, and we'll use this window to start. So let's go ahead and create a new file, PHP file, and I'm going to call this references. And references are pretty challenging technically, but you don't need to know all the ins and outs. Let's talk about what a reference really is. So let's say I have a variable named Batman, and we'll set it equal to the text, The Dark Knight. And then we have another variable called Bruce Wayne, and we'll set Bruce Wayne to be a billionaire socialite. So if I go ahead and echo the value of both of these variables, you get what you'd expect. Let me go ahead and pop up a tab, and I'll open localhost CIS 195p week 5 references.php. And as you'd expect, I have Batman as the Dark Knight and Bruce Wayne, a billionaire socialite. So these are two completely separate variables, and changing the value of one of them has no effect on the other. But what if I set Bruce Wayne to be a reference to Batman? What this little ampersand here means is that the variable name Bruce Wayne is really an alias for the same thing that the variable name Batman is an alias for. So these both are exactly the same memory location. And by setting the value of the memory that's aliased with the variable name Bruce Wayne, I'm also changing the contents that are aliased by the variable name Batman. So if we go ahead and hit reload, now I see that both Batman and Bruce Wayne are references or aliases of the same value. So what if we create another variable, like my favorite superhero, and we set that to be a reference to Batman, and then echo my favorite is my favorite. So that has no effect on the value of Batman or Bruce Wayne. But if I set my favorite superhero to be Superman, and then echo these values again, you'll see that all three variables are references to the same value. And by changing any one reference, you also change the underlying value that the other variables are referring to. So how about if we write a line like this? Well, this is an error because only variables have contents. This is not a variable. This is just a piece of text. And so if I try to create an alias for this variable name, it doesn't work. However, if you have an array, like villains is the array Joker, Riddler, Penguin, and Catwoman. Each of these values is the contents of some memory location, and you can create a reference to one of those memory locations like so. So let's go ahead and print villains of 0, and we'll also print the alias for villains of 0, which is villain, and then let's set the contents of villain to Two-Face. So what do you think we're going to get if we print those values again? Well, villain is obviously Two-Face, but since villain is an alias for this cell of the array, villains of 0 should also be Two-Face. And sure enough, that's what we see. So that's most of what you need to know about references. Just think about them as aliases for variable names or for elements of arrays. Later on, we'll see how they can also be used with objects. There aren't really a lot of situations where you absolutely need to use a reference. You can pretty much get away without using them, but you should recognize them in other people's code. But there are a couple of places where they're handy, and we'll be seeing one of those places this week when we talk about function calls.